Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another edition of Swarm Talk, brought to you by the Crowded Booth, and obviously always is presented by Section 103. Before we get started tonight, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you check out our friends over at Section 103. They just dropped some polos about a couple of weeks ago now. Fantastic quality. I'm not wearing mine tonight because it's getting washed and dried. Well, not dried. We're air drying this. We hang these up to dry. Fantastic quality. Use code TCB10 for 10% off your order. And you can obviously catch all of their gear over there. They're continuously restocking. They've got some really awesome, by the way, they've got some really awesome new Brent Key hoodies that they're rocking, a little darker gray this time around. And so make sure you check out what they got going on. Section 103, our presenting sponsor all year long as we talk about the Jackets here on Swarm Talk. Well, the last time we talked with you, it was, I guess, Monday, or I guess Friday morning, or late Thursday night. And the question was asked, could Georgia Tech avoid the letdown against Temple? And I've seen a lot of mixed reviews. I've seen a lot of people saying, hey, we should have beat them by X amount or whatever. And, on this show, we like to keep things real. Last week, I opened up a monologue, I guess I should say, in terms of how I felt about this team after the win against Clemson and my thoughts on, just in general where this team was. And we'll see. Trevor says right here, Tech didn't cover. It didn't matter. 4-0. I've got some thoughts on that, but I wanted to kick it off with just the really important stuff. Got Gavin in the background tonight. I think Gavin agrees with me here. The jerseys, the charcoal, the anthracite gray. I don't know. Didn't Oregon used to have something they called anthracite gray or something like that? Fire. Like, I love the jerseys that Georgia Tech came out in, and I think those are probably some of the best alternates in terms of away from your white and gold that you've had in a pretty long time. I've said this multiple times. I don't mind the navy. I didn't like the navy with just the gold numbers, but the navy. Gavin, see if you can pull up a picture of this. Georgia Tech's navy with white numerals outlined in gold. Those, to me, were really, really important. So, the navy with white numbers, Nico says, is dope. That was 1990. I felt like they had a more recent version, though, Nico. I might have been wrong in that. All that being said, I love the gray jerseys. I love what they looked like, the way they popped, the way they went with the gold helmet. Just a really, really solid uniform combination. And I think, too, in terms of this, Georgia Tech's one of those programs where I think the fan base and the administration wants to keep things classic and historically accurate as possible, right? And you're going to rock white a lot. You're going to wearing white tops a lot with this team. But I do wonder, because, I cover LSU. They wear white at home, so they're like Tech in that sense. And the fans are really fickle down here about that. But the charcoal gray, whatever it is, like, I'd be willing to wear those jerseys more than one time. I like those. So great combination. You wore them against a G5 opponent. You dominated. They feel good, and they looked good. You feel good. You look good. You play good. Brent Key said the players liked them, recruits liked them, so that was big. There, that was big no matter what. So that's the first order of business. Love the uniforms. Great look. They looked really, really good. Let's talk about this game real quick against Temple, and then we'll get an early look at Wake Forest before Thursday's show. We'll really kind of get onto our predictions and preview of the Demon Deacons and that trip up to North Carolina. I think the biggest thing, and we'll start right here with this, and I'll put this up, Gavin, on terms of this. You're still building consistency, and I think just in terms of where you are as a program, like, you're entering into the next chapter of uncharted waters with Brent Key at the head coaching position, where now you're expected to be that team. You've moved from, that's pretty cool that you've done that, to now you're 7-1 against 8 ranked ACC teams under Brent Key. That's enough of a sample size to say it's not that we might be able to go beat good teams with this group. We expect to go do that. And so, this weekend was kind of the start, I feel like, or this past weekend was the start of a new chapter with, the mindset of this. Now, look, inside the building, they're not going to make this big of a deal. And That's the reason we have a show. We talk about these things because I think it's interesting to at least, think about. But I think you are entering a new chapter of the program under Brent Key's leadership, to where you're expected to go win these football games. You're expected to have a say about your own destiny. And you entered this game against Temple where you won handily. Like, the game was never really, really, truly in doubt. There was some sloppiness at times, and yeah, there was. Even the players they felt like they could have played better, and it's balancing being happy with a win, but understanding you're doing better, and that's something that's the next step in the growth of the program. And I think it's important to take a 30,000-foot view on this, because I feel like a lot of fans were just mad at the way they played. And look, you've built this up to a point to where you're 4-0. You're a top. I mean, coaches poll and AP poll are different. It's what, 16 and 17 or whatever it is. You're a top 20 team in the country right now. You've got everything you want ahead of you. And so was it a letdown performance? Maybe, but look, I mean, part of that's just human. I mean, you get up for the Colorado game. You come back, you take care of business against a FCS opponent. You get up for the Clemson game, emotional 4-quarter battle. I mean, right up until the final buzzer. And then you play, you play Temple in what is not as a highly profiled game. That's just natural. It's very hard to keep that consistent level of play week to week. And I'm not saying Georgia Tech can't do it. I'm saying a lot of teams can't do that. I mean, like I was just saying, LSU didn't do that. I mentioned that, after they beat Clemson in that emotional win, in week 1. They came back and only beat Louisiana Tech 23-7 or whatever it was. I don't remember what the final score was of that game. I try not to remember. So it's just one of those things where the expectation of we just have to go out and beat everybody by 70 points, like, we would like to think that. This isn't a video game. Like, you're not going to be able to just do that. They're not statistics walking around. These are human beings and real people who have feelings and have emotions. And so it's just one of those things for me. I'm not necessarily worried about the performance on Saturday. A lot of people were like, "Oh, well, this is an issue." I'm not really reading a lot into that. I don't think the demise of your season is going to be because you were sloppy or weren't, perfect against Temple. And I mentioned this on Thursday. I think Casey Keeler's a really good coach, and he's in his first year at Temple, which is an obvious rebuild project there in the American Conference. I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility to say, and Gavin can correct me here, I don't think it'd be out of the realm of possibility to say, you've got some coaches in the American Conference that'll probably be making the jump here in the next year or two. Could Casey Keeler be a guy that takes his Temple program as other teams jockeys for spots in the American Conference? Could Keeler be a guy that, takes Temple to the top half of the American Conference? Maybe he can be, as teams are in transition and they're a program that's building. So I think the world of that. I think that's going to end up being a really good opportunity there. So it's understanding how to weather the storm and weather the success. You've weathered the storm under Brent Key, and you've, like we talked about coming in the season, you've got to a place, even last year, you got to a place where you've built a foundation. Now it's, can you take the next step? And so still building consistency, you have to do that every single day as a program. And, for the struggles that we saw on Saturday, I do not think that they are going to go 9-3 because of what happened on Saturday. I don't think that's a good indication of what this season is going to be. So we'll kind of see on this. Gavin, I saw Tripp just put this in here. Let's get the official statement, if we can, on that new ACC 10-game Power 4 schedule in the show that there. And we'll probably talk about the SEC schedule tomorrow night, that being fully released tomorrow night. But I just, in kind of closing on that thought, Georgia Tech's still growing as a program. This isn't a video game. I liked a lot of things I saw, and I'm going to tell you about one thing I really, really saw. And just in general, just keep moving along. Win the game handily and keep going. A lot of people say great teams cover. It's a running joke, but you won the game, stayed healthy for the most part. You saw some things. What can you really take away? I think the biggest thing I'll take away from this, and it's the one thing we've got here, is that the run game is more than Haynes King. Look, you go back to this, and I've got the stats pulled up right here. Georgia Tech's running backs had a majority of the not just carries, but the yardage in this game. 274 out of the 307 rushing yards were just on the backs. Obviously, Hosley leading there had 59 yards on 5 carries. I'm sorry, Jamal Haynes had 107 yards on 107 yards on 12 carries. Dalen Gordon and J.P. Powell had some big yardage as well. I think Gordon had the 47-yard. Yeah, that's what the number was. 47-yard, score. King only ran the ball 8 times, and he had 15 yards, and obviously that accounts for sacks there as well. But that's something, in my opinion, where you take away from the game, and it's like, okay, it's an inferior opponent. You get that wholeheartedly. Like, we understand that. But you needed to show me that you could, like, make this a true 3-headed monster rushing attack. You didn't have to rely on number 10 to just run the ball to where it would make you so one-dimensional. And we've talked about this, after that Colorado game. Being one-dimensional against certain opponents won't kill you. It will hurt you when you play opponents that can counter that. And, maybe we look at the end of the season, there's nobody that can counter that. I don't think that's the case. I think there's some teams, especially as you get into postseason play, and that's more telling of what you have on, the lack of real teams on your regular season schedule. But, you play that game against Georgia against the end of the year. You play an ACC title game against a Miami or a Florida State. Maybe you play a playoff game against an LSU, an Alabama, someone that has a semblance of a defense there. Alabama's a bad example, I guess, in terms of what Florida State did to them in week 1. But I think it's just one of those things where you showed me that, hey, it doesn't have to be 10 that carries the ball the whole time. And, you need Haynes King as close to full health as possible for these games. Because, very few programs are. You're still not a team that can just roll the ball out there and just show up and beat people in the ACC. You got to put forth the effort. You've got to come out and play good quality, well-organized football, well-disciplined football. So you need him full strength because that's going to give you the best chance. That's arguably the biggest difference between what you have. So I think it's just one of those things where you kind of go for you look at what you could have in this offense. You take away, hey, King looked good in the passing game. You really got Malachi Hosley involved. You're going to get Chad Alexander back at some point. Trelane Maddox will come back at some point. This stable of running backs is deep and they're really talented. And that's something that you wanted to be able to showcase, and you did in this game, and you did it in many different ways. Now, I think that's impressive. That's really, really good in terms of that. And, I guess the last thing I'll say on the Temple game, shout out to the crowd for showing up. Wasn't obviously as good as you get against Clemson, but that's part of it, right? So that's kind of the closing thoughts, I guess, there. Let's get to a couple of these comments. Tripp says, well, we'll get to that one in a second. I want to do this one. Scott says, and Jamal runs like he's mad at the world. Hosley is a stud. I agree. Nate says, appreciate you tuning in, Nate. GT fan here in Charlotte. We have a strong base in Charlotte in the Raleigh Research Triangle area. I fully expect us to bring a decent crowd to Wake and later Duke and NC State. Yeah, I think you've got a chance, and I think Tech will travel well to those games. Nuke Jacket says that Hosley needs more than 5 to 6 carries per game. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But it's interesting. Before we get into really, I guess, let's talk about this, Gavin. What are my thoughts on the new ACC 10-game Power 4 schedule? So, Gavin, pull this up right here, and you can see it. I'm going to zoom in, Gavin, so I can see it. So I can't see the comments right now. But Jim Phillips, obviously with the SEC's, permanent opponents, I should say, truly annual opponents, because they're going to be revisited every 4 years. But the annual opponents for the SEC got released today, or leaked today by On3. And then tomorrow night, we're going to have the full 9-game slate available. Jim Phillips talks about the future of the ACC football scheduling model. He says, we've been incredibly intentional throughout our discussions on ACC football, including the future of our conference schedule, yada, 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 yada. Essentially, he says, we've supported a regular season schedule that includes 9 conference games and a minimum of 10 games each year against Power 4 opponents. This positions the ACC as one of the only 2 leagues committed to having every team annually play a minimum of 10 games against Power 4 teams. There will be additional discussions and more details determined, but today's decision showcases the commitment and leadership of RADs in balancing what is best for strengthening the conference in their respective programs. So that's essentially what Tripp was referring to. Tripp, we appreciate you adding that in here. I will say this about I don't know if this really moves the needle for me a ton, just to be honest with you. This is going to sound very anti ACC. If I was a team, if I'm Georgia Tech, if I'm Georgia Tech, and I got to get this right, next year you're playing Colorado. Are you playing what? All Power 4 games next year? You're going to play 9 conference games next year, plus Colorado, Tennessee, and Georgia. I mean, to that point, it's like I'd rather go play somebody out of conference at the Power 4 level than just play Virginia. Because how much is Virginia going to move the needle for you? So, and Jake, I think am I wrong in this? If you play 9 conference games next year, you're going to play 12 Power 4 games. Unless something falls through. I don't know. I don't, Bud Elliott talked about this today on social media, and I agree with him to an extent. And I think that he was saying some things that maybe triggered some fans of it. But I don't think a game, like if you're Georgia Tech, a game against Wake Forest or a game against Virginia Tech right now doesn't move the needle like an out-of-conference game against, let's just like an out-of-conference game against TCU or playing a Big 12 team or playing a Big 10 team or another SEC team. I'd rather see that. Like I'm in the camp of I want to see the best. I want to see the best possible competition, whether it's home or road, be played against. So I don't think that lies within the ACC. I don't think adding an extra game, unless you really, you'd really have. And I don't trust the ACC to do this. So unless you really kind of sat down and you can't really predict what the ACC is going to do because it's crazy to believe. But it would be interesting to me to kind of see like the value of playing another ACC game versus a team from the SEC, Big 12, or Big 10. Big 12 might negate it if you played like Houston, but just be honest with yourself. Maybe it's a question for the chat, and for people watching after the fact and listeners. Would you rather see Georgia Tech play a 9th conference game against Virginia, or would you rather them schedule a home and home with Kansas or Kansas State? I don't think Virginia is better than those teams. And I don't think it moves the needle for the casual fan like an out-of-conference Power 4 matchup would. So that would be my take. That's my take, I guess, John, at Trip. I like that. I will say this. I do like the push to play more Power Conference games. That is what I would get at. So good stuff there. It's obviously interesting to kind of see, where the scheduling model is headed and where we're going in all of this, but it is important. So I mentioned the run game's Warren Haynes King. That's the biggest thing I learned out of this weekend. And I think the defense is getting closer to getting some turnovers as well, which has obviously been, it's been good. So yeah, I just like Georgia Tech's, Nate says this, for those that don't know, we have Tennessee, Colorado, Georgia out of conference Power 4 on the schedule next year. So the Mercer game is going to have to get bought out, correct? If this goes into effect, Gavin, I don't know. Is the plan for this to go into effect in 2026 for the ACC? I don't know. The SEC is doing theirs in 2026. That's crazy if true. All right, let's take a quick break. When we do, we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about our friends over here. My man P. Brennan Simpkins, what he's got going on here in a second. And then we'll talk Wake Forest, just an early preview before we get you out of here. All Natural BS is the bug spray that really, really works. Make sure you check them out. They do fantastic work. Like I've mentioned so many times on this show, it's safe for the family. It's safe on the patio, safe around the pets. It is an effective chemical-free solution for your home, garden, patio, tailgate, wherever it is. So we know you're going to be tailgating more and more. Let's keep it rolling. And proud sponsor of the Crowded Booth this football season. I guess one more thing that we want to get to real quick here is make sure you always continue to check out our friends over at Cajun Cousins. I need some people. I need you to show me. DM us on social. DM us in the Discord. Tag us on social. Let us know that you've checked out Cajun Cousins, and we'll be sending some mini bottles your way of their pepper sauce. Fantastic stuff. Threw it on some po' boys last week. It was elite. It was elite stuff, so make sure you check it out. All right, so just some early ideas on Wake Forest here for you real quick. I will say this, and I think TD Jake said, yeah, you can't lose to Robbie Ashford. At the very least, I'm going to tell you this. This is going to be a real test against a mobile quarterback. Am I crazy, Gavin, for saying that Robbie Ashford might be more effective than whatever Colorado has going on at the quarterback position? Like, you at least know what you're going to get out of him. Like, he's not going to destroy you in the passing game, but the kid's a really good athlete and he's going to run the football. I've seen this kid in person, I guess, twice now, and he's a phenomenal athlete. So my biggest concern, I'll tell you just, my biggest concern in this one is the two-headed attack of Robbie Ashford and Damon Claiborne. Claiborne's probably the best back you've faced. Most productive, at least. I mean, Clemson, what do we even talk about Clemson anymore? I don't know. Does Anthony says, do the ACC pay our buyout? That'd be very interesting. I don't know. I will say this. That would be the concern, right? Like, that's the thing in the back of your mind. Okay, like, Vandenberg gets banged up in this game. Kind of start to wonder, okay, you haven't really faced a dynamic rushing attack. And I'll say this, I think Jake Dickert is a good football coach. He's in year one of a complete rebuild of a program, what they need to do. But he's got, at the very least, he's got two guys in the backfield that can make you pay if you don't stay gap sound, assignment sound football. And I think that little phrase right there triggered a lot of Tech fans from years past. I do think this group is different. I think Gideon is a very good coach. I think they play aggressive. I think they've stayed in their lane so far. It would just be something to where you got to start off really well defensively in this game, I think. So I like what they're able to do in terms of that. Wake is coming off an open date trip, so that is something that to kind of keep an eye on as well. Maybe if something in their favor. A couple more numbers for you. Claiborne's averaging 9.9 yards per carry. Georgia Tech is allowing 4.4 yards in the ground. So you'd like to see that number come down. Wake, I think another thing too, but with what Claiborne can do is, and I have to go to PFF to find this, but his ability to make the first guy miss is something that when you just watch the film, he's really good at. And so you've got to be able to, and Tech does a good job with this, and broadcasts have talked about this. They got to be able to wrap up, and you got to have multiple hats on Claiborne in terms of getting him down. So that would be maybe just the one thing that I would be, I guess worried about in this is if they get you out of sorts and on your heels, it makes life more comfortable for them. Because I'll say this about Wake Forest, I don't think their defense is great. I think Georgia Tech's got an upper hand in that and the advantage in that category for sure. Their defense is allowing 185 yards in the game through the air, 132 on the ground. You start to kind of look at the opponents that they faced and that kind of thing. Georgia Tech should have good success there. But it really just comes down to, I think the biggest key in this one is, can you contain Ashford and Claiborne? If you can do that, Gavin, the spread went down to 13.5. I saw it was something like 16.5, and it was 13.5. Like, it's sliding down that way, and 13. That's a lot of points on the road, like regardless of the opponent and the level of your competition. But I think that I would like Georgia Tech's chances for sure if you're able to shut that down, because I just don't see Robbie Ashford in this passing game coming out and just blitzing you, in terms of through the air. I don't necessarily see that. So we'll see what happens. That would be the biggest concern. And we'll dive more. I'm going to do some things in terms of, looking at some different aspects of this game and what we could take away, what we can look at, and, what I expect to see. But that would be the biggest concern for me heading into this weekend. I think Georgia Tech has to kind of keep that under wraps. You got a really good chance to win the football game. So TD Jake says the fact that we're 16th ranked team in the country and lots of us are worried about Wake Forest is so sad. We need success so badly. It would be interesting. The spread started, we believe, at 16.5. Now it's all the way down to 13.5. So that is kind of something interesting there as well. It'll be interesting to watch this game. As the ACC race really starts to take shape here as we get ready for the month of October, the clocks will change. Here's another thing, and Tripp says this: potential rain on Saturday at 10 a.m. Look, man, this could be a sloppy, low-scoring game. I don't even know what the over-under is on this one. I mean, you're almost tempted to take the and Joe says this: Wake will want to make it a sloppy game. Shoot, you might. I don't know what the under is for our friends over at FanDuel, but might be kind of tempting to take that under if the game's like that. So incoming 50 rushes, he says, yeah, this is going to be a physical football game. It's going to be something that I think both teams are going to be tested in the way that can they stay disciplined as a defense throughout the entire game. If you can do that, you're going to win this football game. And I like Georgia Tech there as well. So I like what they have. The ESPN has it at 53.5. Oh my gosh, I might take the under in that. Is that crazy? I don't know. Jonesy says, let's be honest, Wake is bad. No excuses. Go take care of business. You should, right? I mean, theoretically, you should be able to. We'll see what happens. I think this is a game that you can win. I think it's a game that you can, continue to, you can stack a win here. You can stack a win the next week and kind of see what you have going on, but we'll see what happens. This is going to be interesting. Looking ahead of the schedule with what you have after this, obviously, it really does get interesting as you get into the month of October. I did mention you get a win next week, but it's bye week. You got to beat the bye week. You're kind of creeping up to that road game at Duke, and that was one that I circled. Back in, I said this back in August. The 3-game stretch of Duke, Syracuse, and NC State will tell me if you are a real contender or if you're just kind of in the mix. That 3-game stretch will tell you something. I think Tech has a really good chance to win all 3 of those. I've said this, they got a really good chance to do some serious damage this year. But that's where you learn about if you are, you really have made that jump. So we'll see, obviously, what happens. SEC referee glaucoma awareness, elite username on the YouTube channel. Expectation, don't embarrass me. I like it. Anthony Perez, as always, says go Jackets there as well. FanDuel has that spread over under at 52.5, so you could go ahead and bet that right now and let them know the Crowder Booth sent you. All right, we're going to get out of here. We appreciate you tuning in. Just a Monday night show to kind of rewind some things, take a look at some things, and it'll be interesting. We'll be live again. We'll actually probably be live tomorrow night talking about that SEC schedule release and our thoughts on it. Maybe talk a little bit about the ACC there as well. But lots of great football content coming on the channel. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. And if you're listening on those podcast platforms, we'll continue to see those numbers rise. They're continuing to grow, building some serious momentum heading into what is going to be a fun month of October and a fun month of November as college football continues to roll along. Fellas, we're already, I should say, a third of the way done with this regular season, which is absolutely crazy. So appreciate Gavin hopping in the background, helping me out tonight. My name is Bryce Koon. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Thanks. Shout out to Cajun Cousins. Shout out to All Natural BS. And shout out to Section 103, where you should be getting all of your Georgia Tech merch. This is Swarm Talk, brought to you by the Crowder Booth, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much for watching and listening.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.